Mega Man X7 was a good game and a breath of fresh air for the Mega Man series. There, I said it. You see, there is a strange phenomenon that happens on the internet more often than you may think, where someone or a group of people will find some piece of media, point out its flaws, trash it, and ignore anything good or redeeming about it. Then, over time, others will jump onto the hate bandwagon, giving little to no effort into giving said media a fair chance, choosing to stay away from the supposed evil pile of filth. In all fairness, though, hating and being overly critical over a piece of media is justified where justice is due. But sadly, that's not always the case. A lot of the times when there's a hate bandwagon, it usually starts with small issues or personal opinions being greatly exaggerated for the sake of spectacle. Like when a series tries something new, or when said media doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to. Here's a couple video game examples. Pokemon Black and White initially used to be a very divisive game in the series. People wanted to use the old Pokemon instead of these awful new ones. Or how about Luigi's Mansion? People didn't want a spooky Luigi game. They wanted a Super Mario 64 style Mario game at the GameCube's launch. Though, over time, both these games would get the love they deserve as being some of the best games in their respected franchises. I'm not saying Mega Man X7 is a top 30 X game. Probably not even top 5, but the point I'm trying to make is people can be overly critical to a piece of media to the point of absurdity, with said media getting such a bad stigma that many won't even try it. Or go into it with the mindset of, this media is awful, so I'm going to hate it.
Somebody please tell me I'm through with the worst of it.
And when you go into something with the expectation, and possibly even the desire to hate it, and follow suit with the community, chances are you're going to do just that, without even giving it a fair shot. However, when I first played Mega Man X7, I went into it with an open mind. I was warned multiple times how horrible the game is, and how it wasn't even worth playing. But it didn't take very long before I realized, wow, this game is actually pretty good. To my pleasant surprise, I actually enjoyed it, and don't worry, I'm going to try to go at least a little in-depth as to why I do, and give a few arguments and give my thoughts on the common criticisms. Before we start though, it's worth mentioning that, yes, obviously opinions exist. I'm sure there are many people who still hate this game that did give it a fair chance, and if so, that's alright. Maybe this video will help you see the game from another perspective, and better yet, it might make you want to give it another go. Anyways, as for the story, I'm not going to do an in-depth deep dive here. I'm mainly here to talk about the game. I also think the story peaked in X5, not gonna lie. But here's a quick rundown anyways. A lot of this is ripped from the Mega Man fandom wiki, so shouts out to them. After the events of X6, the Earth is in really bad shape. The Reploids are in the process of trying to make the planet habitable again for humans. But as one would expect, Mavericks are on the rise, and on top of that, X is now retired, putting down his X-Buster to try to tackle the issue in a more peaceful way. This is an issue since X is one of the best hunters out there, making the rise of the Mavericks that much worse. So bad, in fact, a vigilante group was formed called Red Alert. The group over time started acting weird, causing Axel, a member of that group, and a new playable character, to leave. He then eventually meets Zero during an attack, and they 2v1 the poor robot that Red sent after Axel. You then do your basic beat up mean robots until it's finally revealed Sigma is back again. And was behind the change in Red Alert, of course. You defeat Sigma, Axel is now a part of the team, And that's pretty much the gist of it, with Sigma of course promising that he would return, as he always does. Now I like the story. Again, it peaked in X5, but it serves its purpose. Axel story-wise is pretty cool, and I love some of the cutscenes too. The English voices though are insane. I've grown not to hate on dubs as much as I used to, because there are a lot of great dubs out there, and they do get a lot more hate than they deserve. But this one is pretty bad. Luckily you can change it to Japanese if you want. Alright, now let's talk about the game. So first impressions are important, and the intro stage to X7 is a bit mid, not gonna lie. It's kinda slow, and it's probably the longest intro stage in the series, not to mention you're stopped multiple times for a quick cutscene, further increasing the stage's length. It's not all bad though, it has some cool mini-bosses that are really easy to kill if you just do this, and has some amazing background visuals as well. Oh, and also here's the infamous tutorial door. I don't know why people hate this thing so much. All you do is shoot the orb that turns red 3 times, and congratulations. The ending boss is really cool. Here it shows how you can switch between Zero and Axel, and the mini-boss is very easy, giving you the chance to get a good feel of the game. Now we're in the real meat and bones, the Maverick stages. This is the order I'll be going in. So now that we're in our first official stage, it's time to talk about a few of the game mechanics. Starting with Axel. Axel has the ability to turn into other compatible robots. It's gimmicky, but it's honestly pretty cool to play as your enemies. It's Mario Odyssey, but like way before it. I don't find myself using it much though, because the main flaw with it is that once you turn into something, you're just kinda stuck with it for a while. It's also a pain to get the orb thing you needed to begin with. You have to shoot an enemy until it's 1 hit-ish away from death, then use the Axel cannon thing, and then you get the orb. I think a simple way to fix this would be to make it to where you keep it, and you can switch back to Axel and back to the enemy at any time. That would be pretty cool. It's not a bad addition, just flawed, and to be honest, not really worth messing with much on the first play. It is helpful, however, in certain situations to help you get items or to save civilians. Side note, speaking of civilians, I should probably talk about that too. So the civilian system from X5 and X6 are back in 7. It's a bit different this time though. In X7, if the civilian dies, well, they actually die for good. On top of that, one of the primary ways to get your character stronger is to save civilians, because sometimes they'll be holding a special upgrade chip, up to 2 per level. So if you let the wrong civilian die, you just simply don't get that upgrade. I can understand why this may frustrate players, but I'll circle back into that later in the video as to why I don't think it's that big of an issue. But yes, saving civilians is very important in this game, and you are greatly rewarded or punished, depending if you ignore them or not. He also has a combat row. Yes, a freaking combat row. It's easy to overlook, but can honestly be very helpful in some situations. He can also hover, which is super cool, and really good in this game. I should also talk about Zero a bit. I've heard criticisms say that he is unplayable in the game, and that they ruined him. But to be honest, that's not true. He is the weakest character in the game, yes, but he can be very helpful in some situations, and is playable. I think people tend to say Zero is trash based on him when he has no upgrades yet. I will also circle back to this later. And to be honest, it's not that Zero is bad, it's just that Axel is so overpowered, he's just the obvious choice over Zero. The rest of the mechanics are your standard fare. You have wall jumps, the ground and air dash, Zero has a double jump, etc. The combat is a bit different though. You now lock on to enemies given the 3D environments. It doesn't really make the game any easier or harder, just helps the 3D areas from feeling a bit janky. That's one of the reasons why Zero is the weakest, since his sword obviously doesn't lock on to stuff. Would be cool if they gave him like a sword throw attack or something. Anyways, with that yapping out of the way, back to the main game. Donkey Kong stage. This stage, though hectic, is pretty fun. Just gun down a bunch of stone statues, snag this heart container, use Zero's Chad to double jump to get this thing, and avoid the spikes. At around the midpoint of the stage, you will see this little cavern down here. What you want to do is shoot this guy 28 or 29 times, then use Axel's weapon until he dies. Now you can grab the orb and get down there safely. The reason why you want to do this is because one of the civilians here will always give you an upgrade chip. You'll want to get as many of these as you can, because early game can be pretty difficult. Toward the end of the stage, you will encounter a mini-boss. He's very easy though, just stand here and mash. I don't think you even have to duck when they go down. Defeating him will allow us to move on to the first actual main boss. And it's pretty obvious that this is intended to be the first boss in the game. You pretty much just mash and dodge his predictable attacks. He's a bit long on a first play, but just keep your distance, mash square, and you'll get him in no time. Defeating him grants you the JS shield, and now we can move on to Onion Ball. There isn't too much to see here, you pretty much just keep going up. You do fight this genuinely awesome mini-boss though. What I like to do is just use Axel and mash. Also, dodge rolls will make his blade attack very easy to avoid. This playthrough I actually got crazy bad luck, because sometimes after his blade spinning attack, he will immediately do it again without you being able to hit him, and he did it so many times. Anyways, don't forget to grab this heart and keep up a fast pace to get as many civilians as you can. Alright, Onion Ball. His weakness is Zero's Jaya Shield ability. He can pretty much destroy Onion Ball's first stage. As for stage 2, I recommend just keeping your distance, switching to Axel, and then spamming until he's defeated. With Volt Tornado in hand, we'll now tackle Lifesaver Phase. And man, the stage is awesome. This stage perfectly demonstrates what I love about X7. Zooming through a ton of enemies, gunning down mini-bosses, everything about it is great. I also love the use of 3D here. This is easily one of the best stages to showcase how good Mega Man can be in a 3D setting. And to top it off, the boss is awesome too. Before talking about the boss though, make sure to grab your first E-Tank right over here and our next heart here. The other bosses before were a bit slow, but this one is way more up to pace. His weakness is Volt Tornado, just spam him a few times and you're done. Do yourself a favor and just use Zero's Shoryuken here. As you can see, it makes it way easier to time the attacks and makes really quick work of the boss. Next is Kangaroo. This level, similar to the last, is awesome, and another excellent showcase for the 3D sections. This stage also has a pretty cool gimmick, being the ride armor, and to be honest, they feel good. I especially love the spider ride armor. It's crazy overpowered, and I love how you can do the dashing jump and then an air dash after it. It reminds me of the Golden armor from X3. Once you get to this big room, you can get most of the collectibles you need by jumping across these pillars. You'll get another heart tank and the second and last E-Tank. After destroying some of the mechs, you'll be met with the Kangaroo boss. Uniquely enough, this boss has two stages, the first being a relatively easy mech, then the actual boss himself. His second phase can be very hectic, but just mash and jump around and you should be fine. Now the Kangaroo boss will probably be the hardest thing you've done in this game so far, but doing it this early will be worth it, because with Kangaroo defeated you will unlock Explosion, one of my favorite abilities in any Mega Man game. With it, it will make pretty much any boss encounter easier. Alright, at this point I think it's possible to have X unlocked, but I'll talk about X after this next stage, because that's where I usually unlock them. Alright, Ham's stage. Yeah, this level is bad. I personally don't mind going through it, but it is in no way good level design. In X7's defense though, I think all motorcycle levels are awful in the series. At least in this one, it's so easy that a literal toddler couldn't mess it up, so you don't have to play it very long. The level is fairly simple, just pick up the bombs, save civilians as you go, and snag the heart tank. Now I'm actually going to intentionally skip this heart. We'll see why in a bit. Luckily the level has a pretty cool boss to at least end on a high note. Explosion makes him pretty easy. Again, Explosion is really good in this game, and you're going to be seeing me use it a lot from this point onward. Alright, so now we have unlocked X. You select him, ready for the blue bomber to come out of retirement and blast away everything with ease. Yeah, he's definitely been retired for a minute. It's no secret by now that one of the biggest complaints about this game is that X isn't here until you beat like 60 to 70% of the game, needing to have saved at least 64 civilians or alternatively beat all 8 Robot Masters, which is even worse. On top of that, when you do get him, he's super weak. So how I defend this? Simple. It's really easy to get X busted even this late into the game. First things first, we need to do a bit of backtracking. Remember that heart we left at him stage? Well, we're going back with X. You don't have to do this, but I recommend it, because at this point Axel's already really strong, and it's really easy to skip this heart just to go back for it with X. After that, we're going back to King Kong stage. Later in the stage, you will see these two stone guys. Just simply climb them and jump to the left, and you'll be rewarded with defeat upgrade for X. Also, if you want to set X up in advanced, you can also leave this heart here we grabbed earlier. I personally don't recommend this, because X7 early game, in my opinion, is one of the hardest early games in the series, and any bit of upgrades help. And if you're really feeling like a Chad, you can also leave the upgrade chip from the cavern for X as well. Since we're backtracking here, there really is no reason not to if you're feeling confident enough. Not me though, I'd be playing safe. I think this goes without saying, but yes, the rest of the upgrade chips and hearts will need to go to X in order to make him strong. Was that yapping and backtracking out of the way? Next level is Burn to the Ground Dog. This level is super fun. It's fast paced and very hectic, but in a good way. Once you get to around the midway point of the first section, you can go down here and get the second armor piece for X. Now, believe it or not, but I used to do this stage right after King Kong. It's not impossible, but it's definitely one of the harder stages in the game, and doing that adds an extra backtrack. It's a lose-lose, to be honest. Once you get past the 2D section, you'll enter a very open 3D one. This is a great spot to get a good feel of how the 3D sections are, and has some really tricky spots to test your skills, but once you master it, it's super fun just to rush through here. Since I used to do this stage right after King Kong, it helped me get a good feel of the 3D very early on, so the other stages didn't really feel janky with it. Don't rush too much though, or you may miss the next heart. Make sure you switch to X before grabbing it, because once you grab it with another character, it's final. So X is getting stronger, but he's not busted yet. Continue forward and you'll find another teleporter, which will take us to the infamous Burn to the Ground Dog. I won't make fun of him much here, because it's already memed to death, but just take a quick listen. Anyways, what I normally do is the Buster Only strat, where you pretty much just keep jumping around and mash him until you're victorious. The secret is to never let him enter his Tri-Formation attack, since it's way harder to avoid that than the actual missiles. Keep this up for a while and you should be fine. Alright, so Long Nose Guy is next, and we enter the infamous cyberspace level. Now, I don't hate this level, but I'm not going to sit here and defend it either, because I fully understand why this level was hated. Again, though I do love this game, it is flawed, and I will not deny that. And this level was a good example of some of the ideas they tried just simply not landing. The problems with this stage is, first off, the visual overload, in that it can be very maze-like to get through on a first playthrough. Especially if you're wanting to try and save a few civilians to get X a few more upgrade chips for endgame, keeping you trapped here for a while, likely inducing a headache. Not to mention, you will also have to use the Axel bullet to transform into these samurai guys multiple times, which makes the stage feel even slower. Again, I don't hate this stage personally. The music is really catchy and I think it carries it a little bit. I just think it's very mid with some clear issues. Anyways, the heart is located right around here. Make sure you're X when you drop down. And the upgrade capsule is here. I think it gives you the helmet. Alright, boss time. What you want to do is use explosion when you can, but when he goes to the sides like this, use the wheel attack. So this next and final Maverick stage is Big Bird, and did I save the best for last? This level is nothing short of peak Mega Man, dare I say. And if I had to make someone play one stage from this game to convince them that it's good, it would probably be this one. Most of the Mega Man community will look you dead in the eye and tell you that this is one of the worst video games ever made. I mean, come on. Opinions exist and all, but are you really going to put Mega Man X7 in the same realm as something like Superman 64? That's what an awful game looks like. X7 is flawed. Yes, very flawed. But bad? Downright awful? Not in any way at all. So it goes without saying how awesome the stage is. It's fast-paced 3D Mega Man action, and it feels and looks great. My only problem with the stage is this heart right here. It can be really annoying to get sometimes. It feels like it was meant for Zero to get because of his double jump, or maybe Axel because of his hover, but we want the heart for X. So we just kinda gotta go for it and hope, likely taking the deaths even if you grab it. The rest of the stage, however, is peak. The last upgrade you need is right around this corner here. You can't miss it. This will get you the chest plate for X's armor, and now X is really strong with the full complete glide armor. Now see, that wasn't so bad. Now you probably wanted to play as X earlier, which is more than understandable, but don't worry, I'll kind of circle back into that again at the end of the video. The stage ends on a high note too, with a super fun boss, and it's fairly simple. Dodge his blade chucking attack and shoot him with a fully charged X-Buster shot. When he gets close, shoot him with the Buster, then follow that up with his weakness, which is the sniper missile. Keep this up and you'll have him beat in no time. Now with all upgrades and all Mavericks defeated, it's time to head into the Wily stages. Also, if you're curious how I use my upgrade chips in this playthrough, here is a screenshot. You can upgrade them any way you see fit, but I think it's very important to at least put 3 chips on the top row. Doing this will make your attack and defense 50% stronger. So it's really a no-brainer to do this. The first Wily stage is fairly simple. It's an auto-scroller where you must avoid this robot here. The stage is fairly short, and to beat the mini-boss at the end, just use Explosion. Okay, next up is like a really long final stage. First starting out with these giant boulders that you have to avoid. The dodge row will help a lot here. After getting past there, it's time to fight the leader of Red Alert. Red. Very creative name. This boss is pretty difficult, not gonna lie, and that's primarily due to the constant jumping between platforms, and the camera really showing its jank here is not helping. His weakness is Explosion, which helps, but he is still pretty tanky and does a lot of damage as well. And sometimes he'll just appear on top of you, making you take a lot of unfair damage. Use the knee tank as needed, but I recommend only using one if you know you're going to win, because the biggest threat is missing the platforms and dying instantly. This boss is a good example of the X7 jank, and it took me a while to beat on my first playthrough, but keep at it and you'll get him. With the red out of the way, we go back to our standard platforming fare. The level design is pretty interesting in how there are 2 different routes you can take to progress. I recommend taking the right route because it's way easier than the left. I took the left route here, and as you can see... And now we make it to the final room before Sigma himself. Here, just like always, we'll be doing a boss rush of all the Robot Masters. There's really not much to say here other than some of the bosses will be easier, taking advantage of Explosion, of course. Every time you defeat a Robot Master, you'll get a full blue water and yellow water tank. It's very generous, and it's how you will get your E-tanks up for Sigma. One more notable thing I want to mention is that the boss teleporters look like gravestones, and it's much more creative than any of the other boss rush rooms in the entire franchise. Alright, so at this point, we got all heart tanks, both E-tanks, the Wily tank, whatever this thing was, and full glide armor. Now all that's left to do is to encounter Sigma once again. First phase is simple. Just use Explosion. Explosion is really good, okay? And phase 2 is where it gets really good. A giant mech Sigma. What I usually do is go to the far left side here and mash Explosion with Axel. Who would have guessed? When he does this big marquee plier punch, make sure to react and jump to the side, and just keep spamming. The punch can be pretty tricky to dodge, but the laser is super easy. Just hover above it and you're good. As for whatever this green thing he does is, I'm gonna be honest, I just tank the hits and keep spamming, and use an E-tank if needed. Keep this up for a bit, and congratulations, you just beat Mega Man X7. And can I just say that everything about this final boss is peak Mega Man. From the super fun first stage to the menacing giant mech Sigma, the music, the challenge, everything about it is just awesome. Not to mention the visuals with mech Sigma and all that. It's personally one of my favorite final bosses in the entire series. But yeah, with that being said, that's Mega Man X7. Before we end, there's a few more things I want to talk about. Addressing the Tronbon in the room, X7 is a much more clunky and slower experience than the other X games. It's entirely up to preference. I personally think this game doesn't feel that bad. Again, about how a lot of people will just take a small issue a game has, or multiple smaller issues, then greatly exaggerate it to absurdity. Yes, it is undeniable that this game is more janky than the others. But if you play it for more than 10 minutes and get used to it, you'll then realize that it wasn't that bad to begin with. And under the jank, there is an excellent game to learn and enjoy, just like the other X games. Capcom tried something new with this series, with the 3D areas, adding a new character, and though far from perfect, I think it did a pretty good job. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it was a breath of fresh air for the series, especially when you consider it was a follow-up to X6, which in my opinion is undeniably the worst one in the series. It's a good game, but you know, when you're living up to Mega Man X, it just doesn't hold up to the others. I much prefer a new experience, which may have some problems to iron out, than just to make another safe and uninnovated entry to the series. It's honestly a shame that X8 took a step back instead of doubling down and improving the X7 formula, which would have probably led to a masterpiece. Now, circling back to the civilian dilemma, Zero being the worst character, and X not being playable from the start, etc. These are common criticisms with the game, and believe it or not, all three have a very simple solution. It's not perfect, but that solution is Mega Man X7 was never meant to be played once. You see, Mega Man X7 has a New Games Plus, and I'm pretty sure it's the first one to have a New Games Plus in the series. When starting a New Games Plus, you will keep all upgrade chips that civilians gave you, meaning if you missed a couple important civilians, it doesn't matter, because you keep the chips from the last playthrough, and whatever new chips you get this time. Which also means Zero will no longer be weak, because at this point it's easy to max out your characters with these chips. X and X with the glide armor will also be available from the get-go. You no longer have to save 64 civilians and can outright ignore them altogether if you want. The stuff that don't stay on New Games Plus though are the Heart Tanks, E-Tanks, Wily Tank, and this thing, whatever the heck it was. So you will have to get those again. I prefer it that way though, because half the fun with the X games is memorizing all the collectible locations. Anyways, I'm not saying this is a 100% fix to some of the issues with X7. It's more than understandable to not want to beat the game before those problems are fixed. But if you give this game a chance, especially with New Games Plus, I think many will find a lot of enjoyment out of this game, just like I did.